So I'm here with CEO of Metropolis agency, James Cooper. Mate, you guys are one of the best in the business when it comes to media. Thanks for taking the time to catch up.
My pleasure. Thanks, Mike.
So do you want to talk to us a bit about how do you guys think about media for developers? Because you're doing a lot across the marketplace. It's September 2023 right now. What are you saying to developers right now?
There's a lot of interesting conversations going on at the moment, and we're working up and down the eastern seaboard, so Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and ACT. And each of those markets is in a slightly different state. You know what I mean?
That's certainly true.
you could say disrepair, but actually, it's definitely challenging and more challenging in other states than others. And each of those markets is operating slightly differently at the moment. Others have more challenges than others. It's just about kind of helping developers understand the landscape. And also, whilst we're there from a media point of view, our business and our remit is typically broader than that with our clients. And so we're always looking really at not just like what's the right media to buy, but actually how do you get the outcome, in a marketing sense. Metropolis is relatively diverse as a business, like in terms of the sectors it works in, commercial, residential, retail, hospitality, hotels, and then it's diverse in geography and it's diverse in services. And so we're kind of looking at it from the point of view of, okay, well, what's the outcome we're looking to achieve? And then working back into sort of, okay, what's the media need to look like? But then how does creative need to work with that? How does content need to work with that? How does your digital need to work with that? What technology do you need to make that work efficiently? Yeah, it's kind of looking at it, I think, in a broader sense is what's probably helping us achieve results for our clients in the various different markets.
I think about, 10 years ago when I first came to Australia, and it felt like when we got here, it seemed like creative sat in one bucket and then media sat in another bucket, and then technology was the weird kids that were sitting in some other corner of the thing.
That's exactly how it was.
And so that's obviously changed now. And do you want to talk a bit about what's the relationship between creative and media, and why is it important that those two kind of things are talking to each other?
Yeah, look, it's something I'm genuinely passionate about because I think, it's something that we've worked hard to sort of refine here, particularly at Metropolis. But firstly, media has got like a lot more complex than it was 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So like you used to have a listing on REA and maybe some domain print ads and maybe a bit of a listing on domain, and the rest of it was like, do we buy a billboard or, what other print publications are there in the local market?
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of those print publications have fallen away. You've got the emergence of Google and Meta, which are sort of behemoth players in the market. And then the players like REA, Domain, their product mix has become infinitely more sophisticated. And then you've got challenging players now like Urban and AD that have kind of come into the mix. So media is more complex, and the different formats of content and creative that you need across all of those different channels is infinitely more diverse. And so that's sort of like I've got my creative agency over here, and I've got my media agency over here, and I've got my digital technology guys over here sort of idea.
Yeah.
That's just much harder to coordinate, right? Like
totally
from a
agree.
marketing person's point of view, it's a lot harder to coordinate, but also the speed at which you need to react to changes in the media landscape, particularly around reporting and things like that. You can't react quick enough if, you don't have that kind of speed of, okay, we're going to tweak the creative and let's go. You know what I mean? If you have to stop, write a brief to the creative agency, come back, change the media, wait till that's ready, you've already missed that opportunity. And in some instances, you've probably misspent dollars. And so it's just more about optimizing time and optimizing ROI at the same time.
I totally agree. Do you know, I actually liken it to the similarities between the traditional media being like news and things like that versus the podcasts and stuff, where when the creative is integrated into the person telling the story, i.e. like with a podcast, compared to previously where, a scripted news anchor will be talking about something, where if you're not close to the targeting and the audience that you're kind of looking to engage with, and also in control of what you're saying, you're not trying to taking the signals back from the market. And I think as with the prevalence of analytics really playing such an important part, whether it's Facebook or Google, those platforms really have so much insight to share back in terms of driving that creative strategy. And I think that's what you guys are doing really well when we look across the customers that we share.
Yeah.
I think it's what you guys do a good job of is making sure that the creative and the media talk to each other. It's a unified voice, but most importantly, it can adapt based on the feedback that you're getting from the market.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things you need. Firstly, obviously, both your developer brand and your project brand needs depth and structure, right? So you need different storylines within that to be able to develop interesting things to say, right? You then need kind of like your overarching brand, but it has to have flexibility and ideally movement. So lots of video or animation, those sorts of things is really good to work with. And we know that's good for mobile as well. You know what I mean? So you've got to have those things kind of happening. But then you need a whole series, like your campaign-based creative needs to be a whole sequence of things that you're kind of testing and kind of dropping into market and seeing how that works, and then being willing to pull it out and try something new quickly.
Totally. Yeah.
Because that is the advantage of digital. We provide fortnightly and then monthly deep dive reporting to clients, but seldom do clients really have the speed or ability to react from fortnight to fortnight, right?
Yeah. The infrastructure is just not well set up for that.
That's not. And obviously it's budget as well, right? So one of the things we've done here is we've bought content creation in-house for us. So we've got video and photography now sitting in-house so that we can deliver video, or at least master plan the video assets, so that we've kind of got a repository of stuff. And then our 15 and 30 seconds that need to be in all the different little formats that work well for, say, social, they can be rolled out quickly and then adapted quickly, and then new edits can be rolled out quickly. So we're helping our clients through that strategy that approach, just get more bang for their buck out of the media spend.
Yeah, and so when you kind of help a developer launch a campaign, when you inherit a campaign from someone else, what are the common mistakes that you see, other media agencies or developers make in general, and then how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to comment on other media agencies because you kind of don't see the strategy. And I'd say targeting is where things can get out of kilter. There can be some really broad targeting. So there's a lack of use of sort of data to refine targeting. And, you'll end up with sort of, what's this ad for a Melbourne project doing on my phone? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a Melbourne buyer. You see a little bit of that, but that's less common. I think creative, it's like set and forget, right? Like, so you get served the same ad for a month on Instagram stories. It's like, dude, I've seen this before. Like, surely you've got something new to say. So I think what happens is that developers will go, give us a pack of stuff that kind of works for these media channels, and they get it once, and then they won't get another pack of that until for another 3-6 months even, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's no adaptation of content, of story, and there's no iteration, right? And so although the reports are telling them things, hey, this is what people are responding to, this is what they're not responding to, they're not thinking live enough, you know what I mean? It's that sort of digital mindset. And also that it's too static. There's not enough movement. There's not enough video. So I think to get people's attention, and it is all about getting people's attention, we've got a very short span, you know what I mean? Scrolling or, on a display ad, but it needs to have impact. You know what I mean? The music track you choose needs to have impact. The kind of way you use it, and then using all those kind of clever tricks that you can use, like little voiceovers and stuff like that, by anticipating the way people are consuming that media is pretty essential. So I think like where we work in, say, the hotel space, they do a much better job of having more content, but it's easier, right? Because they've got a hotel. They can actually film things in the room. They've got events and doing those sorts of things. I think for developers, you have to work quite hard to keep the story going.
I agree. I mean, I think that's where, the established portals, there's such a distinction between, the challenges that we face working in the development marketing space relative to kind of the established market, where really the house is the house and they can kind of see it, where, I think there's so much more nuance in the off the plan space. And that's why I think urban, we're going well, is because the amount of storytelling that's required when there's not a tangible asset in the same way there is with the established market, it's quite different, and it's pretty tricky at times.
Yeah, and there's storytelling for like the project itself, and then the second layer of that is what is going on with the developer brand, right? And we know that all the research is showing that, especially now, if you think about it, first port of call is this thing going to be delivered?
Yeah, particularly in Queensland right now, with the
especially in
crisis with the builders,
especially in Queensland. But who's behind it? And then if you arrive at sort of developer brand X, and they've kind of got this sort of pretty basic, sort of simple website. There's no new content, no video, nothing's really that engaging. It's kind of like, oh yeah, okay, they're a developer. But I think there are brands out there that do a great job of kind of like, having their socials lit up all the time, having new content on their website, having EDMs out with video updates.
I was actually going to ask you, who do you think are the developers that are doing a really strong job right now, either at a project level or at a developer brand level?
I think the Third Eye guys are some of the best marketers going around. We're working on a project with them, their Crow's Nest Overstation project, which is coming out relatively soon. And just their depth of thought and kind of willingness to invest beyond the project is really considerable compared to other developers that we see. I think Fortis also are doing a really good job, like building a prestige brand in the East and in the markets they're operating in Melbourne and then obviously in Brisbane too. They invest in their own brands, PR, there's good spokespeople. So I think those two brands just sort of spring to mind.
I think what's interesting, right, is that our market kind of comes in ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
And often it can be linked to various things, whether it's interest rates or whatever it might be. And, one of the first things often we see is that developers start underinvesting in their own brand.
Yeah.
But really when they kind of push through in those times when the downturn, that's when the great brands are built. And whether it's Gurner or Grey or Third Eye, the ones you're talking about,
yeah,
they're the ones that really benefit as the market comes back. They're able to charge a premium on that price per square meter. Absolutely.
But also their cost of marketing overall comes down over time. So if you consider, like we work with Villawood in Victoria, right, who've, they've got like 25 live communities marketing up and down the eastern seaboard, predominantly obviously in Victoria, and then around sort of Geelong region, they're a really big player. Their ongoing investment in content and more importantly, like community and the events and all the activity that drives the content to be meaningful and relevant and timely is significant, right? And their brand carries a massive difference in the market. It's not for them just what they're doing in marketing as well. It's what they're actually doing in their communities. Like they're building these incredible community centres, the public art, all that sort of stuff, the parks that they build. And then they use those things as stages for creating content for their brand, right? So it's paying them back through their marketing efforts. But overall, yeah, I mean, like if you were to take a community starting from scratch with an unknown developer compared to them, they're going to outsell that community 3-1 because of their brand, right? And so overall, their marketing cost is going to be lower.
Well, they say the best kind of content is documented, not created.
Yeah.
And, when you're kind of working on actually doing the thing, not talking about the thing, that's often a great place to start. And I think the best brands seem to find that, relatively intuitive.
Yeah. And I think great marketing starts with product first and foremost, right? So if they design something that's great, they got the right team behind it, and then they invest in really great imagery and animation and stuff like that, you've got then a product that's a firm basis to work from. But then beyond that, well, what else are you doing, developer? You know what I mean? To contribute to the community or to connect with buyers, to understand customers. What are the services that you're adding on to the development? I mean, Gurner's been amazing at that, right? It's like, my God, he was the first guy to come out and do a project with 30 CGIs. Everyone's just scratching their head going like, how has he done that, But then from there, he's added on all the services, and it's so much more than that. So that marketing engine, if you like, or that approach is built over time, and it does require investment beyond the project.
Totally. And if you had one kind of key tip for developers watching this from a media or creative or just general marketing standpoint, what would that one tip be?
I think most of the kind of like thinking when it comes to projects gets centered around the creative, like the brand and the name and stuff like that. The reality is a project could be named many different things and it could be branded many different ways, but it's really thinking about the journey and the relationship. When you're thinking about digital, it's not just the banner ad and the color of the banner ad. It's the whole journey through. It's like, I click on the banner ad, where do I come to? You know what I mean? I arrive at the website. Is it easy to give my details? Is there value exchange here? What's the information you're giving me? Is it video? Is it friendly to the way that I want to consume that information? If I give my details, what's the follow-up, right? How am I then working that person through a series of steps or a journey? You know what I mean? I think home builders have done that really well over the years, just because they have to have a much longer relationship, with customers than, say, a developer might. But it's just thinking not so much that it's just about the creative. The creative is super important, but it's that integrated mix. It's the brand into the digital environment, the content you create there, the media choices you make, the freshness of that media, and then being able to respond to what you see in the reporting. It's the loop, the journey that really matters.
Well, James, you've obviously, from our view, one of the best marketers in the country when it comes to property. Clearly, you guys are kind of, the market's voting for that as well, being one of the leading players. So congratulations on the success of Metropolis, and we're, proud and excited to be partnered with you guys.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.